Algebra 2, section 2.1 deals with relations and functions. So we're going to do a lot of graphing for this chapter. And before we graph, we need to be reintroduced to the Cartesian plane. You might not know of it as a Cartesian plane, though, but this is what it's called. It's because the quadrants, 1, 2, whoa, this is no T. 3 and 4 makes kind of a C. Okay, so that's how easy way it's called the C plane, the Cartesian plane. And it's made out of two number lines, which is the x-axis and the y-axis. Okay, so again, this is x-axis and this is y-axis. So for our example, we're going to graph this by creating a table. So it's asking us to graph y equals 3x minus 1. Now again, we need an x, and this is this way. And we need a y, which is this way. For these kind, we're going to come up with the x's to plug in. Okay, because the x's are infinitive. Whatever number we put, infinity possibilities. Whatever we put in here, it's going to give us a y value. So we just want to graph somewhere so we can get an idea what the line looks like. In this case, I'm going to choose a good number of x values that are negative, a good number that's positive, and then 1, 0. So my range is going to be -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Now again, these numbers are numbers I choose. Okay, that's where I get them. And usually we're going to stick to these numbers. Sometimes we're going to have a variation, but usually we're going to stick to -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2. This middle column I've set up so that we can plug in the numbers and do the work. Okay, your book doesn't have it, but it's a very easy way for you to keep track of whether you're doing it right or not. So what that means, I'm going to plug in x. So 3 times -2 minus 1. 3 times -2 is -6 minus 1 gives me -7. Okay? 3 times -1 minus 1. 3 times -1 is -3 minus 1 gives me a -4. 3 times 0 minus 1, it gives me 0 minus 1, which is 0 minus 1, which is -1. This one is 3 times 1 minus 1. This gives me 3 minus 1, which gives me 2. The last one is 3 times 2 minus 1, which gives me 6 minus 1, which gives me 5. Okay? So basically this one, I plugged it in into the equation and I worked it out and gave me a number. So now I have an x and a y. The x tells me where to move here. The y tells me to move this way. So my first point, okay, is -2. So on the x, I'm going to go -2 and down 7. This right here is -2, -7. That's my first point, my x and y. Next one, I'm going to go down -1. I'm going to go back -1 and down 4. 2, 3, 4. This is my -1, -4. Okay? My next one is 0, so I'm going to stay on the 0. Whenever there's a 0, I'm not going to move from that axis. So 0, and then I'm going to go down 1. So this is 0, -1. Okay? My next one is +1, +2. So I'm going to go right 1 and up 2. This is 1, 2. And my last one is 2, +5. So 1, 2, up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 2, 5. And then if I connect it, hopefully I can do a straight line. It looks like this. Not all the way connected, but you can use your calculators. Your rulers. So this right here, once I connect them, this is my graph. And that's how I graph using a table. So on your own, use page 62, number 9. 62, number 9. Sorry if you can't see that. So your first problem is page 62, number 9. It's very important that you remember to do your vocabulary because there's a lot of vocabulary words for this one. Our last example is is something that you saw in Algebra 1. And basically we're going to be dealing with equations. And we're going to deal with f of x. And if you remember, f of x is the same thing as saying y. Okay? So f of x is a fancier way of saying y. But sometimes they're going to give you an f of a value inside instead of an x. That means you're going to replace all of those letters with the x. So for example, this is f negative 2. So instead of my x's, because there's an x in here, I'm going to replace it with negative 2. So I'll have negative 2 cubed minus 3. Once again, what I did is I took that inside and I replaced it with all the x's. This happens to only have one, but if there's more, then you place all the x's with that number and then we solve it. So negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, but since it's cubed, we have to multiply by another negative 2, so it gives us a negative 8. So negative 2 is positive 4, but that negative 2, because it's cubed, times negative 2 will give us a negative 8 minus 3. This gives us negative 11. Okay, so basically it's just plugging in. This one is a little bit trickier because this is, sorry, it doesn't have f. It's f of 2 of f. So basically, instead of all of the, instead of replacing it with a number, I'm going to replace it with a number and a variable. So it's going to look like this. 2 of f cubed minus 3. Okay? And because there's no plus or minus, if there was a plus and minus, for example, if I had 2 plus f squared, I would have to do 2 plus f times 2 plus f. Okay? Because of that plus in there, I have to put it side by side and then I have to FOIL, which we learned in Algebra 1. Okay? In this case, because there's no plus or minus in the middle, I just take this cubed and I distribute it to each one. So I have 2 cubed, f times f cubed minus 3. 2 cubed, 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8. So 8f cubed and then minus 3. Because there's no like terms or they don't give me a value for f, I'm just going to leave that as my answer. So you just plug it in, and then sometimes you don't always have an answer, you just simplify. So on your own, you're going to do page 62, number 12, and go ahead and bring it into class.